So we want to start, of course, with that being Mr. CJ Carr out of the state of Michigan, Saline High School in their 2024, about 6'3", 195 pounds listed. Really talented player. Listed. Yeah. Well, we're going to be generous until we get some official measurements, right? So really talented quarterback in the 2024 class, pretty much consensus top 50 player. I think one has him as a 5-star caliber quarterback. Of course, Lloyd Carr's grandson, which is right. We want to keep mentioning that, especially if Notre Dame's able to land him down the road. But I hear, Brian, by all indications, he did live up to the billing on Sunday.
He did. Now, keep in mind that the format of the camp was such that he didn't get a ton of work in one-on-ones against the defense. I mean, there was, we were asked a question on the message board. I haven't answered it yet because I've just had a lot of things to do. I haven't got to it yet. But if that person's listening now, is this more kids than have been in the past? I don't know if it was more than we've ever seen, but it was a bigger group than normal. And it was still even not they still had the lineman camp where there's a lot of 23 and especially 24 kids that were at the lineman camp. So there was three huge 6'6", 6'7", 300+ pound kids, even at Irish Invasion, but there was even more kids at the lineman camp. I've heard there was over 100 players at the lineman camp. There had to have been well over 100 kids last night at Irish Invasion, which is for the most part an invite camp. I mean, it's not really, but, they definitely like certain kids to definitely be there. CJ Carr was there. The point I'm saying all that is once they got to one-on-ones, there just weren't a ton of reps for kids to take. But we got a chance to see CJ during individual drills, see him running around. I think that to me was my biggest takeaway is he's an even better athlete when you see him moving in drills than he is on film. He's a good athlete on film. We've talked about this, can move the chains and he's a more productive runner now than for example, Dante Moore is in high school, which, there's stereotypes about both kids, but it's the opposite. They're opposite of what the stereotype is. But, you saw him move around yesterday. This kid's really agile. He looks like a kid. He's a football kid, but he looks like the kind of kid that would be a lacrosse player, right? The build, 6'2.5". He looked like 185 to me, but muscular, lean. He's gonna fill out. He's gonna be 200 plus. He's maybe grow another half inch, but he's just got that really athletic movement, right? The agility, the quickness, some strength to him, and things like that. That's something that stood out first to me because that's not something you can always see on film.
Sure.
And then we saw him throw. I think his arm, the first thing I noticed is from the camp setting compared to where he was in the fall as a maturing kid, probably 16 years old now or getting close to 16 years old. He's kind of hitting that growth spurt. He still looks young. There was a couple 2024 kids. There was a Kobe Howard looks like a senior. I mean, just physically, kind of like Richard Young, just in the face looks like a college senior. That's Kobe Howard's a little bit like that.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about him a little bit later as well. But CJ looks young. I mean, so his body's going to develop. But what I noticed is there's already a little bit on this. The last time I saw a quarterback with his level of accuracy and what I'm talking true accuracy, meaning ball placement. Can you put the ball high when it needs to be high? Can you put it low and away when it needs to be low and away? Can you back shoulder it when it needs to be back shoulder? Not just hitting guys in stride all the time, but can you really drop it where you need to drop it? And the only kid that I've seen ever be at Irish Invasion that could match or maybe even surpass what CJ did is when JT Daniels was coming out. And as we all know, JT Daniels was, one of the greatest high school quarterbacks we've seen in 20 years. The job he did and at modern day and his accuracy and ball placement and just in drills is special. And that's what CJ showed. Now, he doesn't quite have the same arm strength as JT did at the same age. JT was bigger, though.
Yeah.
But noticeable jump, just a few more RPMs, right? Ryan coming out. He still throws with tremendous accuracy. There was a throw he made to Jack Larson in one-on-ones where they're running corner routes and he just drops it. Just perfect hang time. And what I mean by that is you want to drop it on a dime to a guy, right? Just really drop it over, but you don't want to float it because that's when the defense can come. His ability to get the ball up with trajectory, but then drop it down with some velocity. So he's not just floating it and aiming it, but he's snapping it off high. It's a release point thing. A lot of kids that don't throw the ball the way he does, they view it as, well, I got to slow my arm speed down. And actually, it's actually sped up a little bit, compact and sped up, but it's more about changing the release point. You need to release it sooner to get that trajectory on it. But if you slow your arm speed down too much, it's going to float. CJ already has that figured out as a rising junior in high school. which I was impressed by. You know, could throw the out cuts, you know, the hash out cuts effectively with some zip and good ball placement. There was one particular throw, I think he threw it to Cam Williams. There was a comeback route, and the corner had decent coverage on it, but CJ threw it with such timing, and the ball placement was such that it was well placed, but it got there with some zip, and the corner, who was in decent position to maybe make a play, just couldn't get to the ball. So Cam Williams is able to catch it. So I was impressed by that. Now, again, we didn't see a lot of competitive reps for him simply because there were so many quarterbacks there. Yes, and there's some good quarterbacks there. So we didn't get to see a ton of that, but just between all the reps that we saw during one-on-ones and routes on air and going through drills, he throws a really pretty ball, real compact release, repeatable release, can throw off platform a little bit. He's not like Dante in that regard. He's a little bit more of a traditional pocket passer, you know, from that standpoint, but that's a part of his game that is evolving. He can do a little bit, but I mean, he confirmed to me, Ryan, that he is what you and I thought he was coming in, which is a top 50 recruit, with the potential to eventually become a 5-star kid. I don't view him that now, but I also don't view many sophomores as 5 stars. I mean, you're just not quite there yet. And I don't like lowering the standard of a 5-star simply because you're young. It's like, okay, you either are or you aren't.
Right.
But he's clearly a top 50 recruit. And with still 2 more years of high school left, I'd be surprised if he doesn't eventually become a no-brainer. Sure, yeah, that kid's a 5-star player. But he's got all the makings of it. It's just I need to see a little bit more physical maturity, just things that are just part of going from 16 to 17 to 18. Right. And so CJ will continue to fill out as well, but a very, very impressive performance. And this last thing, Ryan, he carries himself like you'd expect a big-time quarterback to carry himself. And I don't mean that disrespectfully. I mean just like very confident, very communicative, right? Communicates a ton, talks to kids, engaging. I mean, he was going up to Caleb Beasley, going up to Cam Williams, going up to Jack Larson, just talking to other quarterbacks, you know, slapping hands with other quarterbacks, not big time in it, you know, from what I could tell, not big time in other kids, like, hey, I'm a 5-star. Who are you talking to me? That kind of thing. It was just like, just talking to everybody, you know, and you look for things like that. Like, okay, is this kid going to walk around like his, you know, like he's, you know, just the man and won't talk to anybody else? He walks like he's the man, right? But that's not what I'm talking about. I want a confident quarterback. I don't want a guy like, oh, I'm just trying to do my best. I want you to think you're the man, and when it's a minute left in the game, you want the ball, right? Meek people don't want the ball with a minute left of the national championship game. But then there's being cocky and confident and being arrogant. I don't want arrogant. And that's what you see from CJ, is walking up to people saying, yes, sir, you know, shaking hands with people when people acknowledge him that he doesn't know, smiling and saying, hey, how are you, as he walks by, right? Those are traits you see don't often see from a young kid that CJ has. And I think that's partly where his pedigree comes into play, because he's been around this his whole life, you know, with who his grandfather is. So I was impressed by him. Like he solidified no-brainer top 50 caliber player. He's going to be one of the 2 or 3. There's only one quarterback in the class that I would say for sure right now I have graded higher than him, and that's the Raiola kid going to Ohio State. That's it. Sure.